Okay, that's great, Jennifer. I'll see you tonight, okay? Alright, that's great. Alright, pick you up at 7. Alright, bye. Man, my first date in months. I can't wait. Who are you?
I'm the other character who's here to oppose you.
No, I mean, who are you?
I'm Jennifer's half big brother.
And you're here why?
I'm here to stop you!
Yeah, I'd love to see you try. Oh! Oh! Okay, Jennifer's big brother says that if I go on a date with her, he'll pound me. But you know what? I'm gonna do it anyway. You know why? Because I am brave and I am strong. Yeah, you think you are. Yeah, you stupid moron. This is not worth it. You're risking life and limb for a girl that's so stupid. Yeah, no. I am not stupid. I have waited a long time for a girl like her to come along. She is worth it. And so am I. No. She is not worth it. It's just a girl. It's not worth this, you stupid moron. Just give up right now. I am my own worst enemy. Oh, yeah, that's what I said. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're not stopping me this time. What? Oh, don't know. And that's not going to work out. What? No. That's not possible. No. I can't believe it. You shark. You stupid machine. You stupid PS3. I have to get the high score so I can go on my date with Jennifer. You aren't going to stop me, you infernal machine. What? Now my own door is trying to keep me from going on my date with Jennifer. What are you gonna do now, huh? Oh! 9 basic plots, part deuce! Ready, go!
You got the touch. You got the power.
Hello and welcome to But I Digress, the vlog where sometimes my mouth goes faster than my brain. I am your host, Nathan, call me Nate Marchand. And as I already mentioned, this week's episode will be part 2 of the 9 basic plots. I talked about the first 4 last month, and now I'm going to talk about the other 5 this week. What are those first 4 plots, and why are they so important to know? Watch the other video, I'm not doing the intro all over again. So, in light of all that, let's begin. Number 5. Character versus society or culture. This is very similar to the character versus setting plot, except in the former, the antagonist is the physical environment, while in the latter, the antagonist is the beliefs and traditions of the people who live in that environment. A lot of times in these, or most of the time really, in these sorts of plots, the character is battling against societal and cultural norms. He's a fish out of water, as people like to say. Now, these sorts of stories can be very funny, or they can be very serious. They're used a lot in comedies whereby throwing a character in an environment where they doesn't quite understand or where he's misunderstood, so then a lot of hijinks ensue. And it can be used very well in dramas, say in a story where someone has just immigrated to a new country and doesn't quite understand the culture that the new culture that he's in. This can be very satirical, it can be a great social commentary, particularly if the protagonist has a very different outlook on life and the world compared to all of the people and the culture around him. Some examples of this would include John from Brave New World, who is a primitive from a very primitive part of the world, who is taken to a modern city and is appalled by what he sees there, where, among other things, he sees people whose jobs and their personalities and everything are predetermined genetically before they're even born, as opposed to being allowed to develop naturally or to be allowed to choose who they are. Another one would be the X-Men from Marvel Comics and in the movies, where they are superheroes who go around saving the world all the time, but since they're mutants, society doesn't really trust them. They're very prejudiced against them, but the X-Men still go off and they do all of these heroic things, hoping that they can change people's minds about mutants. Another one would be everyone's favorite time travel comedy, Back to the Future, where Marty McFly travels back 30 years in time to the 1950s and finds himself in a culture and an environment he really doesn't understand other than what he's picked up from his parents who grew up in that environment. And a similar movie would be the little-known satire Idiocracy, about a guy who has completely average intelligence from present day, who is cryogenically frozen for 500 years and wakes up in a future where everything's been dumbed down so much, he's the smartest guy in the world. That's kind of how I feel like now. Number 6. Character versus God or the Gods. This is arguably the oldest of the 9 basic plots, going back to ancient myths and going all the way to modern blockbuster movies and video games. In these sorts of stories, the protagonist is being opposed by God or a pantheon of gods. It doesn't get much bigger than that. A lot of times in these stories, it is impossible for the protagonist to triumph because, like I said, he's going up against gods. I mean, what can you really do in that case? Although, also, a lot of times, the protagonist does triumph against the gods, usually with an attitude that says, I don't need gods anymore, which is sort of annoying for a Christian like me, but I digress. Some examples of this sort of plot are the myth of Perseus, which most of you would probably know for being adapted into the movies Clash of the Titans. The original was better, by the way, where you have a young demigod who is setting off on a quest, and it keeps having obstacles thrown in his way by the Greek pantheon of gods. You also have the book of Job in the Bible, where you have a righteous man who has all these calamities being thrown his way, and he is questioning God, asking him, why are you letting this happen to me when I don't deserve it, even though his jerks of friends think he has to deserve it because only unrighteous people suffer like he does. And I would argue that the show Stargate qualifies as well, because the villains in that are the Goa'uld, who pass themselves off as the Egyptian gods. Some of them are the Greek gods. They masqueraded as the gods in ancient pantheons. Now, I realize that they're actually aliens, but since they consider themselves gods, I would say that this plot still applies to that show. Number 7. Character versus fate or destiny. This is another ancient plot that harkens back to the myths of old. In these sorts of stories, the characters ask themselves, do I make my own choices, or am I bound by a predetermined will? It's a big question, something that writers and philosophers have wrestled with for centuries. You see this a lot in time travel stories, because a lot of times in those, characters are trying to change events in the past or the present to affect the future. And you see it a lot in fantasy that have prophecies in them, because characters wonder if the prophecy can be averted, or if everything that they do, even though they know about the prophecy, will lead to its fulfillment anyway. Some examples of this would include the classic Greek tragedy, Oedipus Rex, about a king who, when he is born, is prophesied by an oracle to murder his father and marry his mother. So the king takes his infant son and leaves him in the woods to die, but the boy doesn't die and eventually grows up and unknowingly fulfills that prophecy. You also see this a lot in many episodes of Doctor Who, most recently in the episode The Angels Take Manhattan. So, which if you've seen, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen it, what's wrong with you? Doctor Who is one of the best shows on TV. Do yourself a favor and go start watching it right now. And finally, you'll see this. Yeah, this is also a big theme and a key plot in the Terminator movies, which I know all about because I met a Terminator just a few weeks ago. And there's a line from those movies, very popular line, that goes, "No fate but what we make." Because the characters are trying to avert a terrible future where robots take over the world and wipe out most of humanity, but some of them wonder if that future can actually be averted. Number 8. Character versus the unknown. In these sorts of stories, the hero knows that he has an opponent, but he doesn't know who or what the opponent is or why he's opposing him. This is difficult to maintain for an entire story because if you just pitch your protagonist up against a mysterious force, you may end up frustrating people because they're going to want to know who the opponent is and why he's doing all of this stuff. But it's a great way to build suspense at the beginning of a story. That's why you see it used a lot in horror and in mysteries, because people fear the unknown. It's in human nature. An example of this, a rather obvious example, is my favorite science fiction franchise, Star Trek, which is all about exploring the unknown and going into new places where we don't know what to expect. It could be Klingons that want to kill us. It could be a whole other race that wants to be friends with us. Who knows? Let's go off and we'll find out. I guess it goes with saying that sometimes the unknown can be very exciting depending on what kind of story that you're telling. A slightly more serious example, one from horror that I can think of, would be the movie Alien, where the space trekkers get a distress signal from a mysterious ship. They go to investigate, and they find the ship on a very barren planet, and the ship's derelict, the crew is dead, and they don't quite know why, and even after one of them gets infested with the alien and starts running amok on their ship, they don't quite know everything about the alien, its nature, how it operates, so because of that mystery, they're rather scared of it, and it creates a lot of suspense. And an example of a mystery would be the new BBC show Sherlock, where, it's the whole premise is you're presented with a crime, presented with some new criminals you have to catch, but you don't know who it is, and they're trying to figure out who it is. But one thread that runs throughout, at least through most of the first season, is who is Moriarty? He's this criminal mastermind who's just as smart as Sherlock, but he's very devious, but we don't know who he is. And finally, number 9. Character versus situation or circumstances. This is similar to character versus society and culture, except in this case, the conditions only apply to the protagonist, or maybe to the protagonist and a few other characters if you have an ensemble piece. And it's things like medical problems or unemployment. Now, this is difficult to maintain, I would say, as a primary plot in a longer story. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm not saying there aren't examples of where that is done. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. But they work very well as subplots or as the plots for short stories, I would argue. I can think of examples like, say, Daredevil from the movie and from the Marvel Comics, who is blind. Or Jake Sully from Avatar, who is paralyzed. Or a very important example would be the characters from John Steinbeck's classic novel, The Grapes of Wrath, who are unemployed and are moving out west in order to seek better fortune. Well, there you have it, true believers, the 9 basic plots. I know some of you might be upset that you now know that you can't come up with any original plots, but the 9 basic plots are a big playground with plenty of room for all the stories and characters that you can dream up. Or you could be crazy. Grab plots that you've never seen put together before and construct a story that uses all of them. It would be insane, and I'm sure people would love it. I'm sure people would love the stories that you could come up with, because they'll be more wrapped up in your original stories and your original characters than they will be worrying about which of the 9 plots that you're using. So, go out there and make new stories, my friends. Thank you for joining me this week on But I Digress. This is Nate Marchand, signing off. Taking me down this time. What? Oh, you want to throw those at me now? Oh, what the crap? No way. No, not this time. No. What?
Game over!
No!
Ah, pickled! I had to do it.